In the quiet suburbs of Wiltshire, England, stood a modest yet charming Victorian townhouse. Its brick facade carried an air of nostalgia, and the creaky floors echoed tales of the past. For years the house remained unsold, partially due to rumors surrounding its history. Yet, when Emma and Michael Green found the property during their house hunting journey, they saw only potential. Emma, a schoolteacher, was enamored by its character, while Michael, a software engineer, was drawn to its spacious interior and affordable price. The couple had been searching for months, and this house seemed like a dream come true. They decided to move in immediately after finalizing the paperwork. Their first night in the house was uneventful. They unpacked boxes, had a simple dinner, and retired early. But as the days passed, peculiarities began to surface. Emma was the first to notice the subtle disturbances. She often found the kitchen cabinets slightly ajar in the mornings, even though she distinctly remembered closing them. Michael dismissed her concerns, attributing it to the house settling or their exhaustion from the move. However, when they started hearing faint footsteps at odd hours of the night, their skepticism began to waver. The sounds were faint, almost as if someone was pacing back and forth upstairs. Michael often went to investigate but found nothing. "I'm sure it's just the pipes," he would say, though his voice lacked conviction. The house had one peculiar feature, a small locked room on the third floor. The previous owners had explicitly stated that the key was lost, and the room had been sealed for years. Initially, Emma and Michael didn't think much of it. But as the unexplained phenomena grew more frequent, the room began to feel like the epicenter of the unease. One evening, Emma stood outside the locked door, drawn to it by an inexplicable pull. She placed her ear against the wood and froze. From within came the faintest sound, a whisper, low and unintelligible. She stumbled back, her heart racing. When she told Michael, he laughed nervously. "Old houses make weird noises. Don't let your imagination get the better of you." Weeks later, their unease reached a crescendo when Emma woke up in the middle of the night to the sensation of being watched. She glanced toward the corner of the bedroom and saw the silhouette of a man. His features were obscured by the darkness, but his presence was unmistakable. Emma screamed, jolting Michael awake. He switched on the bedside lamp, and the figure vanished. "You must have been dreaming," Michael said, though his pale face betrayed his fear. Emma wasn't convinced. The encounter left her shaken, and she began researching the history of their home. What she discovered sent chills down her spine. The house once belonged to a man named Harold Crane, a reclusive figure who rented out rooms to boarders in the 1920s. Among the tenants was a young man named Victor Hart, who vanished under mysterious circumstances. Locals whispered that Victor's disappearance was no accident and that Harold was involved. Over time, the house gained a reputation for being cursed. Subsequent owners reported strange occurrences, and many claimed to see a spectral figure roaming the halls. When Emma shared her findings with Michael, he remained skeptical. "It's just local folklore," he said. "There's no such thing as ghosts." But Emma wasn't so sure. Their disbelief was shattered one stormy night. As rain lashed against the windows, the couple settled in the living room with a movie. Midway through, they heard the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps above them. Michael grabbed a flashlight and headed upstairs, Emma trailing hesitantly behind. As they reached the landing, the footsteps stopped. The air was heavy with an oppressive silence. Michael swung open the door to their bedroom and froze. The sheets on their bed were rumpled, as if someone had been lying there. But the room was empty. Emma noticed something on the nightstand that hadn't been there before, a crumpled photograph. She picked it up and gasped. It was an old black-and-white image of a man standing in front of their house. The man bore a striking resemblance to the figure Emma had seen in their room. "We're leaving," she whispered, her voice trembling. The couple packed a few essentials and decided to spend the night at a nearby hotel. As they descended the stairs, a loud creak made them stop in their tracks. The locked room's door was ajar, revealing darkness beyond. Michael shone his flashlight inside, illuminating a small, cluttered space. The walls were lined with old newspapers, and in the center of the room was a single chair facing a dusty mirror. On the chair sat an old rusted key. Emma's heart pounded as she realized the key likely fit the door to the room they had just entered. But before she could voice her thoughts, a sudden gust of wind slammed the door shut, trapping them inside. The mirror began to fog up, and words appeared as if written by an unseen hand. "You can't leave." The locked room closed around them, its oppressive air thick with fear. Emma clung to Michael as the words continued to etch themselves on the mirror. "You can't leave." The flashlight flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. Michael fumbled with his phone, switching on its flashlight. The narrow beam cut through the gloom, illuminating the dusty room and the mirror's ominous message. "Who's there?" Michael demanded, his voice trembling. A cold breeze swept through the room, though no windows were open. The chair creaked as if someone unseen had just sat down. Emma pointed at the mirror, her hand shaking. The words had changed. "He's watching." They turned toward the chair, and for a split second they both saw him, a translucent figure, seated calmly, his eyes fixed on them. It was the man from the photograph. Michael lunged forward, grabbing the rusted key from the chair. The ghostly figure vanished, leaving behind a suffocating silence. Emma yanked at the door, and to their relief, the key fit perfectly. The door creaked open, and they stumbled out into the hallway, gasping for air. "We need to get out of here," Emma said. But the house had other plans. As they descended the stairs, the walls groaned and shifted. Doors slammed shut, trapping them on the ground floor. The temperature plummeted, and their breath formed misty clouds in the air. "Run!" Michael yelled, grabbing Emma's hand. They sprinted toward the front door, only to find it sealed as if it had been fused with the frame. Michael threw his weight against it, but it wouldn't budge. Behind them, the faint sound of footsteps echoed, growing louder and more insistent. "Upstairs!" Emma cried, pulling Michael back toward the staircase. The footsteps followed them, heavy and deliberate, as if the house itself was herding them back to the room. With no other options, they ascended to the attic. The room was empty except for an old trunk in the corner. Emma opened it, revealing a collection of personal belongings, letters, photographs, and a leather-bound journal. She flipped through the journal, her eyes widening with each page. "It's Victor's," she whispered. Victor Hart, the missing tenant from the 1920s, had documented his suspicions about Harold Crane. The entries described how Harold had become increasingly erratic, accusing Victor of stealing from him. Victor wrote of strange noises in the night, doors locking on their own, and a growing sense of dread. The final entry read, "I hear him pacing outside my door. He says he wants to make things right. I don't think I'll survive the night." As Emma finished reading, a low growl resonated from behind them. They turned to see Harold's ghost materializing, his face twisted with rage. "You shouldn't have come here," Harold's voice echoed, hollow and menacing. "Why are you doing this?" Emma demanded. Harold's ghost loomed closer, his form flickering. "This house is mine. It always has been. They tried to take it from me, and I made sure they couldn't leave, just like you." "Victor?" Michael asked, his voice shaking. "Victor betrayed me," Harold hissed. "He thought he could leave without paying what he owed. No one leaves without my permission." Emma held up the journal. "Victor didn't betray you. He was terrified of you. You locked him in here, didn't you? You killed him." Harold's form wavered, his expression momentarily conflicted, but then his rage returned. "I am this house," he bellowed. "You will never leave." The room began to shake violently. The walls cracked, and a deafening roar filled the air. Emma grabbed a candle holder from the trunk and hurled it at the ghost. Harold's form dissipated, but the chaos continued. "Let's go," Michael shouted. They raced down the stairs as the house crumbled around them. The doors that had once been sealed now swung open, revealing an escape route. They burst through the front door, tumbling onto the overgrown lawn. Behind them, the house groaned one final time before collapsing in on itself, leaving nothing but a pile of rubble. In the weeks that followed, Emma and Michael struggled to process what had happened. The authorities dismissed their story as hysteria, citing the house's poor structural integrity as the cause of its collapse. But Emma couldn't forget the feeling of being watched, the cold touch of Harold's presence, or the tragedy of Victor Hart. One day, while unpacking boxes in their temporary rental, Emma found the crumpled photograph of the man standing in front of their house. She turned it over to find a chilling message scrawled in shaky handwriting. "He's still here. Thank you for listening to my story. If you want to hear more scary stories, please like and subscribe to my channel.